Hello, I'm David Hunt, CEO and founder of Hyperion Executive Search and your host for the Leads in Cleantech podcast. It's great to be back. I hope you all had a refreshing holiday period and Christmas. Great to have you back. The first episode of the year I'm really excited about, actually. It's a technology and a company I've been following for a little while. My guest today is Yaron Ben Nun, who's CTO and founder of Nostromo Energy. Lots of that you'll discover in this episode, super technologies. One thing I would ask before we go into the episode, though, is please do make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel and or your podcast channel of choice. It really does help us to make sure, A, you don't miss any episodes. Helps us when we start to look at additional guests. It's always good for them to see that they've got a good audience to talk to. So please do subscribe both on LinkedIn and or your podcast platform of choice. Thank you for being a listener. Welcome to 2023. Got lots of really cool guests lined up for you. First of all, Yaron Ben Nun. Hello, Yaron. Great to have you joining us on the Leads in Cleantech podcast.
Thank you very much, David. It's a real pleasure to be a part of your show. It's an amazing show. I'm a follower, a fan, if you might say so.
Excellent. Glad to hear it. Now, listen, as is always the case, there's a super lot to get involved and talk through today. I really, really love your technology. It's something that I've been aware of for some time, and it's so important, and we'll discuss exactly why that is. But also, I'm always, as you know, fascinated around the entrepreneur story and some of the journey behind that. Now, this, as I understand it, is your first spell as an entrepreneur, but of course, you've been in business for many years previously. Maybe you can share a little bit of how you came to the point of thinking, actually, I'm going to do this. I'm going to start my own business.
This is really, I don't think there is one story for all, the crazy things that happened and brought me to this point that I decided to go all the way because I thought I wasn't curved to be, the entrepreneur kind of guy, going, raising money, all the bureaucracy, but I was more or less pushed to it. And I would say that there is a point that you have a thought, you have it was not an idea for a solution yet. I think that the problem that I thought that I'm recognizing was so intense, so huge, and my thought was if I can only prove to myself that this thought is not a real one, because how can I be the only one that sees the potential of a solution that will come and bring some ease to the grid in the way that what we're doing. In the short, we will talk about it, and this is the only thing that drove me. And after I had a good portion of research, and I understood that there is a real problem that can be solved if I only find a solution that looked to me like doable.
Okay.
So the first one to be convinced were my parents, and we had friends and family around, which there were no friends, only family. So my brother and sisters and parents did the first 150K round, only because the problem or the potential I described convinced them, because I did not have a solution yet. But I told them, I think it is doable if I'll have the money and the time to research it with the right people, we can solve it. So what drove me to be an entrepreneur is recognizing the size, how immense is the problem that I'm looking at, and to be sure that I'm actually looking at the right thing. So after I was convinced with that, I felt that I have no choice but to turn and to try to make something out of it, to find a solution.
Right. I love that, by the way, because so many entrepreneurs or wannabe entrepreneurs look at, they have an idea for a product or a solution and then try and find a market or trying to find a problem to what they've come up with. Whereas, as you've clearly outlined there, you recognize a problem and then you go find a solution to it. And that kind of product market fit or that idea around solving the problem, solving the pain is what drives success, not developing something cool and snazzy that doesn't yet really have a solution to, or it's a solution to a problem that doesn't exist sometimes. And I think that's sometimes you find. So cool. But you've got a strong technical background, of course, getting to this point in terms of obviously being the CTO and the founder of the business, having a really strong product background, which we'll talk much more about. But that was your history before founding the business, that you're involved in various different sort of technical environments?
I think that my experience was mainly the experience that drove me into being, the founder of this company and the tech leader. is energy. I was a part of a team that brought energy management software for the industrial arena. And for the first time, we showed industrial entities the exact energy that they're using for each kilogram or pound of their finished products in real time. Mm-hmm. And what we show them is the immense fluctuation, which is crazy. You think of a bottle of a Coke. How big the fluctuation of energy usage producing each kilogram of Coca-Cola, for instance, how big can be this fluctuation? So I can tell you it's like 3 times. So you look at the graphs and you look at this and you say, what are the causes that makes this planet to use 3 times the energy for the same product all the time? Right. So and there of course came so looking at the fluctuation, you could see the potential of energy management, of what it can bring you. And while diving into big data analytics and see how energy is being used and distributed and misused, I learned a lot about the potential of giving an answer to cold energy production, meaning mainly HVAC cooling systems. So there was the base of my knowledge to understand, look, the biggest consumer, maybe not in London yet, maybe in a few years from now, but in Israel for sure, in the Middle East, in the United States, southern to the latitude of, let's say, San Francisco, New York, all the South America, of course, Southeast Asia, mm-hmm. the part of the electricity that goes for space cooling is immense. We're talking about 30 to 40% of every kWh that is produced is designated toward space cooling. Yeah. So this notion was built when I was digging into the data of energy. And of course, the industry used a lot of cold energy, not for space cooling, but for process. So I would say that all in all, we're talking about 50% of all energy goes for space cooling and procedure, process cooling. So if you can find a way to control these systems better, you have something in your hand. When I was talking about the problem, I wasn't talking in general about the energy storage need, because this is, of course, everybody knows today that the need for energy storage is big and is going to get just bigger. Mm-hmm. The combination of one trivia aspect of the anomaly of water that came into my knowledge just by coincidence, because maybe I'm a curious person, which says it's a trivia. Very easy to secret. It's like it's called the latent heat of water, and the meaning of this is that when water change phase from liquid to solid, they can store an immense amount of energy without changing their temperature, just through the changing of phase of the water. Yeah. So I'll give you a number. In order to heat 1 gram of water with 1 centigrade degree, you need to invest 1 calorie. But in order to melt 1 gram of ice, you need 80 calories, 80. This is how strong this phase change of water. Now, knowing that at one place in my head, and knowing that energy storage is the biggest need and the future biggest need of the grid in order to to complete or keep on the transition into renewables, and knowing the third thing, that cooling systems are a major contributor to the load of the grid. This is the story I went out.
This is what created in your head,
I told everybody. I told everybody, look, it's crazy to go after rare earth materials, cobalt, lithium, whatever, if you can solve it with change phase of water, guys. So I said to myself, okay, how complicated can it be to build a system that will, or a cell, energy storage cell, which will be efficient and advanced, so we can change the way building consuming their energy using water.
Yeah,
that was the big combination of the two notions that I said it can't be too complicated. Okay. So I said to myself, this is the quest I would like to this is the journey I would like to
which
to
you
have
threw yourself into. Yeah. No, we're going to dive into that now, because one of the things I think we touched on this briefly before, what I love about your product and your service is two things, actually. One of which is so often we focus on utility scale, which of course is important. We also, particularly with the situation in Europe at the moment and elsewhere, look at the residential market because energy prices are driving into the consumer market. So often what's neglected is the huge opportunities and also the challenges within the C&I, the commercial industrial markets, right? And you're addressing that. So that appeals to me greatly. The other thing is, as we all know, we're into this phase now with climate change where we're getting these feedback loops, right? So the world gets hotter, we need to cool more, cooling more, using more energy, which creates more. So it's in this negative feedback loop, right? And your solution, again, is addressing that. So that's the reason I loved it and why I was keen to reach out, get you onto the podcast. So let's, for the audience, just share a little bit more specifically about the product then. So essentially, we're talking about, obviously, ice and phase change, but essentially, what is Nostromo Energy? What is the solution? Where will people see this increasingly on a roof, for example?
Yeah, so Nostromo, I think the big leap that we did, we're not the first one to freeze water, of course, in order to control electric loads. But the biggest question was, how can you retrofit the building? How can you make a system that can take an existing building, which is 98.5% of the market, and change it for the good, make it an energy asset, transform a building from, I would call it a stupid consumer of electricity to a smart consumer of electricity that can actually support all the huge changes that we are facing. Mm-hmm. And for that, we developed a special cell, which is modular, is quite small in size. It's like 500 liters of size, one cell. We can put them in any shape, any form. They can be in a shallow formation on neglected commercial roofs. They can be along walls. They can be below your feet. They can be stacked in your lower, floors, like in your garage floors, or wherever the existing building can actually embrace this kind of system, which right. has its volume and weight, mm-hmm. and change completely the way it consumes a big part of his energy. Yeah. So that was the first thing, the first development. We got patent. Our cell is patented. It was the procedure. It was granted just half a year ago, mm-hmm. and so it's a modular a cell. And the next thing was to stabilize the stability of discharging or thawing or melting ice. Now, this is, I won't get into deep, but you surely understand when you have a bulk of ice and you start to melt it, so there is a barrier of water that you're actually building between your heat exchanger and the body yep. of ice. So your momentarily power rate is reduced through the, just imagine yourself that at the end of the discharge of the cell, you have mainly water and very little pieces of ice. So the biggest problem of technology still today trying to utilize ice was the second half of the discharge. Okay. Because the power rate you could actually draw from a system was dropped dramatically, yep. and that made an unstable, if you have an unstable battery, you have a problem. Yep. You need to stabilize the battery. So what we did is solving this instability and actually making our cell or actually developing a cell that can maintain a stabilized power rate through the whole procedure of discharge. And we're talking okay. about 5 hours of window that you need to supply the same power of, yep. of energy. And that was the biggest next thing. The third one was to make these systems communicate with the next generation of fluctuation, of optimization, yep. to understand the spot market of energy, how it needs to cut your demand charges. This is a sophisticated. It's a lot of. You need to have forecast. You need to optimize, and the customer doesn't want to know anything about it. He wants to stay neglected.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you need to solve it A to Z. So that was the last thing, to put it all under one roof, one umbrella, so the customer is totally can totally ignore that he just installed an energy storage system, and the system is working all the time to maximize the profit or the value generation for the customer.
Excellent. Yeah, no, I should say people don't want to know how you fix it; they just want to know it's fixed, right? So they don't need to know how all the details work. Let's go back a little bit. So, in super layman's terms, essentially, the ice cell solution that you have uses X surplus energy, for example, overnight when it's very windy, for example, and there's low demand to go through the phase change to create the ice, and then during the day when we have this duck curve later in the day when the demand is high, you're utilizing the rephase changing back to its normal, the water state, to offset and eliminate a lot of the energy consumption that would otherwise be used, right? Is that very simple?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in California, for instance, which is our beachhead market, 90% of the clean energy comes from solar. So the charging phase will start at 8 a.m. and at 4 p.m. we will reverse and we'll start to melt the ice and taking off the grid all these chillers, cooling systems, that are cooling processes and space in commercial buildings, and therefore enhance the possibility of the customer's ability to draw more clean electricity, lowering carbon liability, and avoid using high carbon and expensive electricity at the afternoon.
Okay, so this is a super solution because it addresses the in-building issues, obviously the energy consumption usage for the owner-occupier of that building and how that affects their business models, etc. But on the larger scale, then this also impacts on the grid. We talked about again, particularly in the US, the grid in the US is not in good shape, right? So there are a lot of challenges around that with blackouts, brownouts, these other things. So the solution en masse can aggregate to solve a lot of these problems. But that throws up a little technical challenge because you've got the technical issues you just talked about around creating the phase change seamlessly and super efficiently. But then you've got to integrate with building management services and systems. You've got to integrate with the broader grid. So there's a big software play, I guess, behind this as well as the hardware.
So I'll be honest, and I'll tell you that we are avoiding as much as we can interfering with the BMS systems, because nobody would like you to come and to say, you know what, I'll get into your system, I'll hook up and start to play with it. No, we're doing something much more simpler in the eyes of the customer, meaning we are connecting to the return. Just to be level, I'm not sure everybody are aware that in commercial buildings there is a central cooling system which is called chiller system. And the chillers are cooling water. And when you're turning on your air conditioning in a hotel, let's say, this is not actually the air conditioning you're turning on. What you're turning on is a fan coil that receives cold water and it's just circulating the air through a heat exchanger with the cold water. So the actual energy is provided distributed with cold water inside the building that are generated. The cold water are generated in a central plant called a chiller plant. So what we are doing, just imagine that the chiller plant is sending cold water. This is 7 centigrade usually, and it gets it back with 12 centigrade. So we catch the return hot water.
Okay.
And we lower the temperature with the thawing ice. Mm-hmm. So the chiller plant gets cold water after it sent cold water. So the set point of the chillers tell the chiller there is no load.
Right.
So stay off. So we actually taking off the customer's chillers from the electric grid with no any interference with their control, because this is something that customers won't like. But we do take the load to our system, so the chillers get cold water, so they stay off as long as we would like them, or we can take them off the grid.
Great.
So this is the way we control the chillers. Mm-hmm. As for the smart operations or maximize your profits towards the grid operator. So that's of course vary from a different geography to different geography. Sometimes we just do what we call bill management. meaning we are acting upon the differential in cost of the electricity, when you have demand charges or you have on-peak tariffs. So we avoid this on-peak tariff and we charge our system at low tariff rates. And sometimes it's more complicated, so we connect to a operator of a virtual power plant.
Right.
Any ancillary services provider that knows the momentary needs of the grid, and he can tell us with flagging us,
right,
now charge, now discharge. So it's a different financial scheme. So we adjust to the geography and the best profit for the customer.
Perfect.
We're serving the customer electric cost. Just for your general understanding, because people like numbers, to understand, we can, in California, we can lower about 35% of your electricity that goes for cooling. Okay. So it's a 35% reduction in your cooling electricity costs. If you're a big hotel or a big user of cold energy, that could be not a small amount of money.
Not a small amount of money at all. Absolutely. Let's jump talk about money, because you've had some good news on the fundraising side recently, which we'll move on to. But you talk about, obviously, knowing the problem, not yet quite having the solution, raising some family money to get you going. And now you're obviously at a point of commercialization and obviously having solutions on buildings. That's quite a journey. So what were some of those big challenges once you had the small seed funding from your family? How did you then go about creating the product, creating the team, and getting to a situation now where you have a tangible product?
It's a funny story. I was sure that the first idea I had was the greatest idea. And that was to dig a hole, screw a big hole in the ground and put like a pipe inside, so it will be the container of all what we're doing, the ice making and so forth. And we actually built a prototype. I invest like $100,000 from the first initial $150,000. Until this day, we raised about $40 million. So I'm talking about the very start. And we built a demo that was demonstrating this approach. And I asked for a friend of mine, which is a knowledgeable guy that comes from the industry of bottling, of bottle fillers, like soft drinks. Mm-hmm. And he came and he looked at what we're doing, and he said, this is the dumbest idea I've ever seen, something like that. And I said, don't say it. I mean, I became white. I said, what do you mean? Why are you so rude? I mean, how could that be the dumbest? So he said, you don't know, but my expertise is not actually production. My expertise is in water, because we produce soft drinks and we have our own wells. So we take our own water from the ground, and I'm expert at multinational laws for how to keep the aquifer water clean. And I can tell you that nowhere in the world they will let you drill in the ground and put your additives, which are glycol. This is like an antifreeze, because when you're freezing water, you're using an agent that can go below zero without freezing. So nobody will let you put it in the ground. So your idea, won't work anywhere, because you did not consult with the right people. So it took me and my partner 24 hours to put ourselves together, to get our whatever together, and we said, okay, so what we're going to do? So we sat down and thought or redesigned the whole idea without penetrating the ground. Yeah. So. And that was the biggest. I actually gave him a portion of shares, because he was so frank. And he helped me the most with designing, a better solution. Not only that we're not now in the ground with all these, regulations, we are in a totally different, area of the modularity and the easy installations. So he helped me a lot. I think that was the most significant event of criticism through my whole procedures of raising money and bringing investors and so forth.
Yeah, you need that though, right? Because that could have, if that conversation didn't have, and you could have invested a lot more time and money chasing a route which wasn't obviously going to be successful. So I'm glad you gave him some shares, because that was probably the most valuable insult.
That's right, and I told him that later on. It was hard to get to get your because he said it very rudely, but that is the kind of guy, very outspoken or a blunt person.
Yeah. But we need that, right?
Yeah, I needed it as an entrepreneur. I needed it.
But we all need that, and
totally.
I think sometimes, unfortunately, in all walks of life, sometimes we surround ourselves with people or that tell us what we want to hear. Or again, it's difficult when you're raising money from your family. Of course, they think it's the best thing ever because you're the best thing ever, and all this kind of stuff that comes with it. But having someone who will stand up and say, "Actually, that sucks," or "This isn't going to work," or really helps you.
Yeah, that sucks. Yeah.
Reevaluate and come up with a better solution, right?
In Israel, there is some kind of culture. I think that this is something about the Israeli entrepreneur or the scene of the startups in Israel, that everybody has an opinion, and they are most of the times they are very blunt, telling what they think.
Yeah.
I think it helps us to avoid, less effective ideas or to be more to better our positioning and through. The last 7 years we were through, and we are still facing immense challenges in rethinking about how we approach things. We all the time see that we can improve the way we are approaching solving problems, and we need all the time to think out of the box and the need even way beyond the technology. We're talking about market. We're talking about engaging a market that he's actually totally not aware of being our market. Now, let's talk numbers. 74% of the electricity goes into buildings. 55% of the electricity is consumed by the C&I sector, the commercial industrial sector. Only 1% of energy storage is installed in this huge energy user, the C&I sector. The answer why is very, very simple. Because the only available or known technology is lithium-ion based batteries, which has safety issues, and the fire codes are not easily embracing putting big systems into commercial buildings. You can find these 15, 30 kilowatt hour systems in the garage, of residentials, no problem. But if you go beyond 200, 300 kWh, you start to get into the zone of fire codes, which no commercial, hotel manager or shopping mall, owner would like to go into. This is not their game. So this is the main reason that energy storage is not penetrating building. But on the same time, the biggest loads of electric vehicles, of cooling systems, are emerging inside the cities. So now we come to the question of, first, when the limit of the infrastructure of distribution will come to be a huge problem, bringing all this electricity that being stored with lithium-ion batteries outside the cities into the cities. The second thing is how we can better approach our future customers and let them know that they are the solution, not only the problem. They can be part of a huge solution, and they can be part of the game of the transformation of the grid.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So much is around education because they don't understand. There's so many companies, we talked before, there's of course a lot of greenwash going on, but there's an awful lot of companies who genuinely want to be sustainable, not just from a financial perspective, that's important of course, but to be better citizens and companies. And so often I've spoken to many. I had a solar business in the past, and they like the idea of solar panels on the roof, and of course that can be a very good solution. But roof space is often filled with chillers and other products, so they often don't know what's possible or how they can participate in a solution, like you say, to solve the problem, not just always be the cause of the problem.
Yeah, to be active, really active. Now let's look at California because it's a huge case study. In California today, every sunset, the grid is losing about 18,000 megawatts. Now just think about it. It's 18 gigawatts of electricity that is lost through 3 hours of sunset from, let's say, 5 to 8 or 4 to 7. First, it's an immense instability challenge for the grid. The grid in California is igniting hundreds of peak power plants into the grid every sunset. This is a huge event. At some minutes, the grid is losing 300 to 400 megawatts every minute. This is crazy. And then you look at something, a knowledge that is being now evolving more and more and created and is getting bigger from day to day, is the understanding that the actually electricity from the grid through the daytime in California is very low on carbon.
Okay.
You can get about in Los Angeles, we have real-time readings. Mm-hmm. So in Los Angeles, you can get 30 grams, like a morning normal carbon liability of 30 grams per kWh. On the evening, you can jump to 500 grams. So there is a notion that starts to being built of the consumers that they are passive in their electricity consumption. They just take what they want whenever they want. But their liability, their carbon liability actually changes from minute to minute.
Yeah.
So if you can take more through daytime and avoid evening and later evening, so you're actually changing your balance.
Right.
Now, there is a big question here. We can prove, the financial viability to a certain state. I would say that we can bring today in California our systems to return on investment of, let's say, 5 years. This is good, but there are many customers that it is not enough for them.
Right. Yeah.
But if they will understand that tomorrow morning they will start to be their carbon liability will start to grow, and they will have to be accounted for the carbon emissions that they are electricity related. It's not about your gas, or car or operation. It's about your electricity, ever changing carbon, mm-hmm. emission related to the mixture of fuel that you're. So this is I would say a spot market that is carbon readings that just has started to evolve, and actually the customers are not yet aware that they are getting into this era of carbon liability. So until that will be monetized, we still have a lot of challenge to bring the new customer into this arena.
Yeah, that's an incredibly important point. I've spoken at a couple of events recently where we were really pushing around carbon taxes, or essentially people paying for the carbon intensity of whatever they do, whether it's a house or a business or whatever it happens to be, and then it starts to be a different picture, right? If you have to pay for your pollution, if you have to pay for your carbon intensity, then that changes the dynamic significantly. And that's what we have to do as an industry. Of course, it means companies like yours who are creating innovative breakthrough technologies which work. But we also need to have smart business models, and we need to have that polluter pays mindset and those mechanisms where the carbon intensity of your activities start to impact on you negatively if you don't address them in the right way. And that's clearly, as you say, that's where we're starting to see some traction taking place now.
I believe less in the frightening approach, although I'm frightened. I'm a little bit frightened of what we're heading. I'm looking at reality and I say, how are we going to meet all these goals if we're not aligned, if not together. But this is one thing. I would say that this is a great opportunity to lead. If I was an owner of buildings, office buildings, or commercial user or industry that is accounted for high electricity, demand and usage, and I would have an opportunity to pick up this glove and become a leader in this space, which is empty. Yeah. This space, who is actually doing real, movement, real, proactive approach to lower his carbon intensity? Who is doing that? We don't see these leaders yet. So it's an open opportunity to become a leader, to show the way. I think it's a great opportunity for the early adopters to come forward and to understand that they, as consumers of electricity, can actually make a change and influence the stability of the grid and the penetration of renewables by being a more, I would say, the DOE is calling it grid interactive building.
Yeah.
The DOE already inked the term a grid interactive building. What that means is that the building is actually capable to change the loads with taking in consideration the stress of the grid.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you something. This is a true belief of mine. The transition towards not 100 renewables, the transition towards 50% renewables will never get there if the consumers themselves will not become more flexible in how they consume their energy.
Correct.
There is no way, because the infrastructure cannot take care of every load whenever it comes with clean manners. It must be a much more dynamic approach. And I would say it's really like the evolvement of the internet, that at first we were sitting in front of our TV, and there was one broadcaster, and we were all, sitting in front of one broadcaster. And now today, everybody are broadcasting. Now I'm broadcasting to you, and you're broadcasting, and we're so. This is what actually goes going into the grid, into the electric grid. So, yeah, if you put solar panel on your roof, you become interactive. And now comes the era of storage. So we believe that this is the big next revolution, that buildings will become an active partner in this transition and will gain a lot of benefits. Some of them financial, some of them social, some of them being much more responsible, and some of them will be with carbon liabilities in this way or another. We believe that the future is in the hands of the more advanced consumers.
Yeah. That alignment, as you say, is critical, that all of these things point in the right direction and start to solve the problem. So, and again, one of the things I love about the technology, and I think generally, of course, it's really important we do have grid scale stuff, and we have fields full of batteries and solar farms and wind turbines, all this kind of stuff. And that's, of course, really important to the transition. But I think also having technology which is really close to the point of impact, whether that's a residential building or whether that's a commercial building, where you're solving problems as close to the source of the problem as possible from an efficiency perspective and from a number of perspectives. And also because it engages, I think, the inhabitants of the building on a personal level. Think, why have we just invested in this building in solar or in this water storage or in whatever it might happen to be? People, when they see and hear stuff going on in their buildings, in their homes, their communities, start to engage, right? And start to think, actually, this is, how can I take part in this? How can we get this into our building? How can we get this into our portfolio or our real estate? And it becomes not something that's over there, it's something that's right here.
Yeah. I think it's a big question that people asking themselves, how can they feel that they are effective in this quest? Many don't have a real way to do that. What would you do? Would you start driving on your bikes everywhere? What you can actually do in order to make a real change, impact. So we believe that this, I would say, ability to choose business, owners or providers of services that will be more active, into reducing their carbon liability and so forth.
Yeah. That
will make a huge change. And we as a society needs to start to choose better in order to influence and make it, and echo these messages.
Yeah.
I think that this procedure will come naturally. I hope that we will be, it won't come too, late to go through this 1.5 or 2 centigrade point. This point of no return is a concern of mine. It's a deep concern of mine. Last year, we saw that the financial, challenges drove a lot of companies away from being bold about their, actions towards climate change. I hope that will change fast. We should not be intimidated by this, trying time, because our way is a long way.
Yeah.
When you hear first the 40 billion tons number, like I have here the Bill Gates book, How to Avoid the Climate Disaster, and he starts with 52 billion to zero. This is the title, and he means it doesn't matter if it's 52 billion tons of carbon dioxide emitted every year, or 40 or whatever, 35. Some say 36. The truth is that we are burning a huge amount of oil every day into our atmosphere. And looking at our planet from space shows you how thin this layer of atmosphere is. Because looking at the skies looks like endless, endless. You can put anything in the skies, you'll never fill them up. But looking from space on the blue marble, you see how thin is our atmosphere. Yeah. And at some point, you're starting to feel inconvenient with these numbers, not even, with the consequences of tragedies like climate disaster. Just, you wouldn't do that to your drinking water anyway. Right. Why should you keep on doing that? That can't be, it's not sustainable. No. It's not a sustainable way to live without all these predictions, So I'm now deep into this feeling. I feel it in my body. And I hope that the transition will not lose pace.
I'm sure it will accelerate.
It's really important because it needs.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's people like you and us and everybody on the podcast are all doing their part to forward this transition in any number of ways. So we've got a little bit of time left. What I wanted to check on with you is really where the business is at the moment, because again, there have been, on the broader scale of the Inflation Reduction Act in the US has been fantastic. Of course, Europe will have to do some kind of equivalent to be competitive. There's lots going on geopolitically. But you've had some successes in the US, so perhaps you can share a little bit about your current situation as a business.
Sure. The first great thing that happened is that the Inflation Reduction Act of the President Biden was signed, and in it there is a special segment called the ITC, Investment Tax Credits, which actually acknowledge thermal energy storage, or our technology and other companies' technology, as eligible for 30 to 40% tax rebate. Now, this is a huge, statement of the DOE and the federal government, saying that they acknowledge that energy storage for thermal energy storage in buildings, which is, of course, the cleanest way to store energy and the most sustainable one. There is a huge, problem of sustainability with all the electrochemical storage technologies. Mm-hmm. We don't have it. We are totally recyclable and have almost zero degradation through 20 years. So we are a great solution from the environmental point of view. So now the federal government is acknowledging that and put us, for the first time in history, under the ITC, meaning that there is a lot of 30 to 40% rebate on the taxes. That was the first big thing that happened around June. A week ago, we were announced that our application for the LPO, the LPO is the Loan Program Office of the DOE, which holds about $100 billion that they are meant to finance with very low interest installations of infrastructure investment for clean energy, just like ours. So we passed the first phase of this application. So we asked for $189 million. This is a huge amount that we asked in order to be effective. This is an amount that will help us to build about 120 systems, about 1.5 to 2 megawatt hour each system. So we're talking about 270 megawatt hour installed mainly in California. So that moved the needle. And the DOE, we passed the first stage. We are now getting into the second crucial stage, which will take about, I hope, half a year. And if we will pass this, so we will be able to offer many customers, zero down payment, low interest, enhancement and transformation for their buildings, and they will be able to give back their loans only from the savings on their electricity bills. So this is like an enormous step that the federal government, and there is a lot of local, incentives in California and all around pushing these technologies in order to transform buildings into the future. And I hope that soon enough we will pass this stage, so we will be able to make an impact, a real impact with clean technology for storage of clean energy. Now this is an important thing to understand, that the vision of going to 100% renewables using mountains of lithium ion cobalt, electrochemical solutions, it's kind of controversial. It's kind of crazy. We don't want to leave the next generation a different problem from a different area, just by solving this problem to bring, we should, if we can reduce the usage of these kinds of rare earth materials, and very hard to recycle, and, electrochemical solutions, we think that these kind of technologies must have a good chance to improve themselves by changing, in a sustainable way, changing the way buildings are acting in the energy field.
Sure. No, absolutely. It's just nothing is entirely without some consequences. And the more we can address those, the better, whether that's recycling and obviously reducing the levels of materials in lithium ion. But of course, solutions which are inherently safe and natural, like water, is of course a great one. Listen, we spent a lot of time. We could do a million hours more, I'm quite sure, Yaron. I wanted to maybe just get from you. First of all, we'll make sure we signpost to everybody that's listening to your website, because I know there's some cool videos and they get a chance to see some of the cells in use and in action. So we'll make sure that that's signposted from the various episode pages on the YouTube channel, et cetera, et cetera. But maybe in closing, you could share, because you've been on quite a journey, first-time entrepreneur. We talked about every entrepreneurial journey is different. Maybe you could share just one or two quick words for entrepreneurs out there, and what have been the key learnings or the key advice you would share to people who are about to embark on the journey that you've been through?
I would say that this is the most demanding part of my life. This part of my career is so demanding, I cannot even start to explain how much burden is to being successful in bringing so much power and money into your idea. How much of a burden it is. So many people believes in what we're doing. We cannot fail, and I'm taking this personally, because I truly love every one of the investor of mine. I'm not talking about, we're public now, so I don't know all my investors, but I'm the core investors of the company. And I would say, beware of a mediocre idea. Don't fall in love. I mean, an entrepreneur falls in love with an idea. This is a huge, demanding journey you are going to step into if you're going this way. Make sure you're in love with not less than a great idea, because at the harsh times, when times is trying and so forth, you will always have to look for straightforward at your idea and say, does that really mean so much? And you must get a great answer back. Yeah, it does. Otherwise you're in trouble.
Right.
So choose your ideas. I would say differently. I think that ideas that they're trying to make you fall in love with them. Right. Every idea I had at the first morning, I thought, wow, this is so brilliant. No, I must be a genius. Even the most stupidest, the episodes of small ideas. Ask yourself tough questions about the ideas that take your heart, that draw your attention, that try to make you fall in love with them. Be very
and have some good questions right now. We touched on this very briefly, and we're running out a little bit of time. But the Israeli culture, and also the Dutch, actually, for that matter, very straight talking, very honest. Germans as well. So having people around you sometimes who will say, this is, like you say, this idea sucks, and then if you don't agree, you really don't agree, right? So you can push your ambitions further. So.
No, fine. You can try, to give a good answer to your criticism. The one that criticize you. Keep the most criticized, people close to you. You need them. You need them near you.
Neither. Perfect. Listen, it's been brilliant to talk to you, Yaron. Thanks very much for sharing. So for the audience, obviously, please do share the episode, enjoy the episode. If you haven't already, click to subscribe on YouTube and onto your various platforms of choice on podcasts. But on their site, you'll find links to Yaron on LinkedIn, links to the website, links to various places you can see the Nostromo technology in action. First podcast of the year. It's been great to have you. Thanks for listening. Thank you, Yaron. Have a great
Thank you very much, David. It was a true pleasure.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.